In this video we're going to have a look at an absolute incredible game between the two big stars from this Tata Steel Chess India Rapid and Blitz tournament. It is Arjun Erigaisi, world's number 4, the man in tremendous shape, who is playing against Magnus Carlsen, world's number 1. And what a game it is. It's a rapid game, time control, 25 minutes plus 10 seconds increment. But a lot of interesting things are happening on the board. So let's dive straight into the action. And if you haven't subscribed yet to the channel, you know what to do. Thanks for your help. And I will show you what happened in this game. Erigaisi starts the game with 1 e4, c5, knight f3, e6, d4. It's the open Sicilian. Knight takes back. Knight c6, knight c3 and queen c7. And this is the Sicilian Taimanov variation, a very popular opening which has been played by really a lot of strong players and also numerous times by Magnus Carlsen himself. Erigaisi goes here for the move bishop e3, it's one of the main options, and after the move a6, white has really a lot of different ways to play this position. There are a lot of aggressive moves like queen f3, and g4, these are sort of the main lines, but the move chosen by Erigaisi is also one of the critical lines here for white. It's the move a3. And this may look not as sharp as you would expect from a lot of Sicilians, but it's a very useful move, as with a pawn on a3, it will be much harder for black to generate counterplay based on the moves b5 and b4. So this is actually quite interesting, and one of the reasons I really like to show you the game, not because these two superstars are playing against each other, is just that a few months ago I just released a very interesting opening course on this opening, on the Sicilian Taimanov, so you may check out exactly what I do recommend on this video production made by ChessBase. And well, in that video course I do actually recommend the main move b7, b5. I believe it's absolutely playable, but it's interesting to see what Magnus Carlsen does in this position, because Magnus always goes his own way. He decided here to take on d4, and the positions will become very similar to the ones I do describe in that video course. After taking with a knight, white takes back with the queen, but there are some differences, because with the queen on d4, it will be a little bit harder to complete the development on the king side, because you cannot really move the bishop, as then the pawn on g7 will be hanging. Black therefore decides here to develop the queen side first. b7, b5, bishop e2, bishop to b7, interesting moment. Where is white gonna castle? Of course, Arjun Erigaisi is the one who is liking to go for the challenge here with the move castling queenside. Very nice idea. And here rook c8. You will come across a lot of these setups in this opening. The rook and queen are working nicely together, trying to exert pressure down the c-file. So if black gets the chance here, he would love to go knight f6, knight takes e4, after which the knight on c3 proves to be not a great defender of the pawn, because the knight cannot really go away. Well, king b1 was played, knight f6 on the board, and Erigaisi advances the pawn to e5, attacking the knight on f6. The knight comes into d5, and now things are getting much sharper. If you do take on d5, which was played in the game, don't take with the queen on c2. This is a Zwischenzug, intermediate check, but it's not such a great idea, because after moving the king away, if you do take with the bishop, which is what you would love to do, there is rook c1, and after moving the queen, the rook on c8 is hanging. Not a good idea. Just stay away from the pawn, just take back with the bishop on d5. Now the pawn can still be taken with check, and therefore white played here the move bishop to d3. But then at the same time another pawn is hanging. It's the pawn on g2. Bishop takes g2 was played. It is not a poisoned pawn probably, because well, you attack the rook goes to the g file, and the bishop slides back to d5 after the bishop grabbing a pawn on g2 is absolutely safe again. It's nicely supported by the pawn on e6, and that's very typical in this opening. Now the d file is closed. It will be difficult for white to generate some active play on this open file. But of course there's also the open g file, so black will have to think about how to get the bishop into the game. White played here h4. So Erigaisi says, well, I don't mind that pawn. I'm just going forward with my plan. He wants to play h5, h6 and try to create new weaknesses in black's camp. And interestingly, now black, Magnus Carlsen, played here this move, g6. Remarkable move for a lot of people, as you think, okay, white can play h5 anyway, but the pawn on g6 is pretty well defended. And, well, black can simply decide here where to develop his bishop. Well, instead of h5, the move queen f4 was played first. I think it's also quite a sensible move. So that if, let's say, black decides to put a bishop on g7, you can put a bishop on d4 and the pawn is still nicely defended. But instead, bishop went to e7. It's always difficult to say where is the bishop better placed, but in the Sicilian Taimanov, very often you prefer to have your bishop on e7. It guards the king better. Black doesn't have any plans of castling anytime soon. The king is relatively safe in the center, being supported by its own pawns, by the other pieces, and the bishop is working on these two diagonals. So black is still rock solid. h5 was played, and well, white is looking for ways to open up that king side. Let's see how that works out. Magnus played here this move, rook f8. He is moving a rook away from h8. And he's basically saying that if you're ever going to take, everything is pretty well covered. I mean, your pawn up. And how should white proceed? It's not clear how white is going to make more progress here. So this is in fact a very important position. And I'm struggling to come up with a good plan here for white. Because you cannot easily move the queen. Then the queen on c7 is targeting the pawn on e5. And if you, for instance, play something like bishop e4, trying to get rid of the most annoying piece of black, the key idea for black here is to go queen c4, and likely queens can be exchanged very soon. If you take on d5, you can take back, and there are still pressure against the pawn on c2 as well. So these sort of positions where more and more pieces are coming off the board, it really will help black. So instead, Erigaisi played here this move, bishop d4. Bishop is doing well here, supporting the pawn, guarding the own king. But Magnus comes up with an interesting plan. He played here the move queen b7. And what is this queen doing here? Well, first of all, it does keep everything nicely protected. Also the bishop. But at the same time, after the move rook g3, there followed the move b4. And you can see that with the queen on b7, you're trying to exert pressure along that b file against the white king. So pawn takes b4 was played, and Magnus captures with the queen. Very interesting move. So the bishop on d4 is still pinned. It's also not under attack, so everything is well covered. And black doesn't care about that pawn on a6, gives it away. And here you would expect Magnus just to go with the rook to the a file, trying to attack the bishop. If the bishop goes away, you can set up a battery with queen and bishop, threatening mate. It does look pretty dangerous. And well, Magnus does it in a slightly different way. He starts here with the move rook b8. And I do understand the move, but the pawn on b2 is pretty well defended by the bishop on d4. Bishop went back to e2, and now the rook went to a8. I mean, is Magnus crazy? I really struggle to understand what went through Magnus's mind. Maybe he missed something along the way, some misevaluation, overlooking a move by his opponent. Still, his position is fine, but why to waste the tempo on rook b8, rook a8? I'm mystified with this play, but the game goes on. Here, Erigaisi played the move b3. And, well, the rook on g3 nicely protects the pawn on b3. So sacrifices are not really working out in black's favor. And at the same time, after the move queen a5, the bishop is coming back to b2. And the bishop is a very important defender of the white king. It covers the a1 square, first of all. And after queen a2 check, the king goes to c1. You can see that the bishop is covering the dark squares. It's not so simple to go bishop a3 here. It's an interesting move, one of the many possibilities. But, well, the white king can always try to run to the center. So far from clear this position. Magnus goes back with the rook to c8 here. So you can see there are plans now to take on b3, exploiting the pin on the c file. The pawn on c2 is pinned. So therefore, look at what happens now. The move c4 was played in the game. You're not attacking the bishop because of that same pin. But okay, white is trying to grab some space and consolidate his position around his king. But look at this. Magnus captures the pawn on h5. Finally, I mean, for about 10 moves, there was this option. White could have taken on g6, black could have taken earlier. But at this point, it's really clever that black decided to take that pawn. Because if you do take back with the bishop, which was not played in the game, there is bishop takes c4. And the bishop cannot be taken because of rook takes c4 with a double attack against the king and the queen. I mean, the line is still very complicated and white can keep playing here with something like rook c3. And after this move, you're pinning the bishop goes back. Rooks are coming off the board, the queens can be exchanged as well. But in such an endgame, I mean, black is up still a pawn and has good chances to convert. I mean, definitely this is what Magnus is enjoying for sure. After g takes h5, there followed the move queen to d4. And white is trying to consolidate his position. If the bishop ever moves, then you got to reckon with threats against the pawn on d7. Well, Magnus played here this move, h4. He's attacking the rook and saying that now you can never take that pawn again. The bishop is defending the pawn on h4. And white got to decide where to go with the rook. Not so easy. I would think rook c3 is in fact a very natural move to unpin the pawn on c4. So you're threatening to take the bishop on d5. But Erigaisi, getting lower on time, decided here to play rook h3 so that, who knows, at some point the pawn on h4 can be eliminated. But here, since c takes d5 is not a threat, black has time now to improve his own position and went here for the move rook g8. It's a very nice move. Rook has done this job on f8. Not really sure what it was, but now it's back to the open file and ready to infiltrate into white's position. King c2 played, keeping everything defended. Rook a1 is the major threat to trap the queen. And Magnus drops back with the queen to a8. So the queen is safe. It does support the bishop. And everything is under control. What should white do? Well, I think rook a1 does make a lot of sense. And the game goes on. But instead, rook c3 was played now. Very understandable move to unpin that c-pawn and threaten to take the bishop. But now, thanks to the queen on a8, the bishop can come to e4 with check. And the king is in trouble because in case you go back with the king to c1, there is bishop g5 and all of a sudden the king is caught in a mating net. White will be forced to block the check with one of his rooks, losing the exchange. The alternative is to go with the king to d2, but then the queen is no longer able to drop back to d2, to that square, and there is bishop c5. And look at this, the queen on d4 is just trapped in the middle of the board. There's no square to go to, it can always be captured. And that explains the only move in this position is blocking the check with your bishop. Bishop d3 was played here, but now the bishop comes to f3, attacking the rook on d1. And you can see that with the bishop on d3, white has no chance here to take the pawn on d7. The rook actually went to a1 to attack the queen. Queen goes to c6, keeping the pawn defended, keeping the bishop defended. White is in big trouble here. He can take the pawn on h7, so materially speaking the position is even again, and you do hit the rook on g8, but the rook comes in to g2, and you can see that the pawn on f2, even though it's still defended here by the queen, black is about to play bishop c5, attack the queen, after which the pawn on f2 can be taken by the rook. White doesn't want to allow bishop c5. Played here bishop a3. Now the bishops can be exchanged. And still materials even, but black does have a nice passer. The pawn comes to h3. It's 2 squares away from becoming a new queen. Queen h4 played, trying to gain control over that pawn. But the pawn is coming to h2. And here you see the threat is to play h1 queen. If you do take with the queen, there is a rook takes f2 with that same check. And the bishop will be able to take the queen next. Sort of only move is rook to a1. So you're controlling the promotion square, but there is rook g1 interfering on the back rank. And, well, the rook on a1 is just hanging. If you take on g1, It's h takes g1 and black is just up a full queen all of a sudden. Instead, there's not much white can do. Decided here to take with the queen on h2, but it's rook takes a1. Black is up a full rook. Erigaisi doesn't give up, and as always, he manages to find still a last trick in the position. He played here bishop g6, giving away that bishop, but if you do take it, well, the h-file is open. There is queen h8, and after king f7, it's queen f6, and it's leading to repetition of moves after king e8, queen h8, back and forth. The king can't escape, but since you are already a full rook up, don't be too greedy. Don't take that bishop. Just put that king on d8. That's what Magnus Carlsen did. And the king is safe. He's up a rook. And here, Erigaisi said, well, it has been enough. Resign the game. It's just a full rook. I mean, if you take the pawn on f7, for instance, queen e4, and very soon this king is getting checkmated. So, very interesting game by Magnus Carlsen, who played fantastic chess on day 2. He is on 5 out of 6, winning all his 3 games on the second day. But still, there is a third day of Rapid coming up soon. And he still has to play against the main contender for first place, Nodibek Abdusattorov, who is just half a point behind Magnus Carlsen. So that's going to be a very exciting final of that Rapid event. Well, I hope you like this game, this video. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, give it a like, make some donation to the PayPal account. I really appreciate all your support, guys. Thanks for that. And well, I will keep you up to date here on what's happening at the Tata Steel Chess India event. See you soon again.